The sun was high in the sky, shimmering against the clear blue water of the community pool. The sounds of children laughing, splashing, and parents chatting filled the air. It was a picture-perfect summer afternoon until the atmosphere suddenly shifted. Jaden had been looking forward to this all week. At 16, he was balancing a summer internship and his growing list of responsibilities. But today was about relaxing. With his towel slung over his shoulder and his swim trunks on, he walked through the pool entrance, flashing his keycard. At the gate, he had barely dipped his foot in the water when a sharp, disapproving voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" Jaden looked up, confused. Standing near a pool chair, gripping a glass of lemonade as if it were a gavel in a courtroom, was a middle-aged woman. Wide-brimmed sun hat, oversized sunglasses, and the unmistakable expression of someone who believed she was in charge. Jaden frowned. "I'm about to swim?" The woman scoffed. "I don't think so. This is a private community pool. We don't just let anybody in." A few people nearby stopped talking, sensing the sudden tension in the air. Jaden felt the shift, too. He had seen this look before, the suspicion, the judgment, the immediate assumption that he was somewhere he didn't belong. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his keycard, and held it up. "I live here. My family moved in last year." But the woman, Karen, didn't even glance at it. She just smirked. "Oh, is that so? Well, I know all the homeowners here, and I've never seen you before." Jaden exhaled slowly. This wasn't about proof. It never was. "I live in house 214, he said, his voice calm but firm. "My dad bought the property last summer." Karen raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a condescending smile. "Oh, honey, that's adorable. But let's be real. Your dad works for someone here, doesn't he? Maybe as a landscaper? A housekeeper?" The words hit Jaden like a slap. The pool area had gone eerily quiet now. People exchanged uncomfortable glances, some shifting in their seats. A few guests looked ready to step in, but no one spoke. Karen, oblivious to, or perhaps thriving in, the discomfort, let out a dramatic sigh. "Listen, I don't want to embarrass you, but this isn't some public rec center. We have standards, rules, and frankly, I don't think you— Is there a problem here?" The voice belonged to the security guard, a stocky man in his 50s, clipboard in hand. He had noticed the commotion and decided to intervene. Karen turned to him with dramatic urgency. "Yes, actually, this boy is trying to sneak into the pool without permission. He claims he lives here, but we all know that's not possible." Jaden clenched his fists. The security guard hesitated. "Do you have proof?" Wordlessly, Jaden pulled out his phone and scrolled through his emails. In seconds, he had a digital copy of their utility bill, his father's name, their home address, everything. He held it up. Satisfied? The security guard studied the screen for a long moment. Then, with an apologetic nod, he stepped back. "Looks legit. He's a resident. There's no issue here." "But Karen?" She wasn't done. She scoffed, shaking her head. "Oh, come on. Just because he has some paperwork doesn't mean he belongs here. We can't just let anyone waltz in. Next thing you know, they'll be bringing in all their friends, and this place will be crawling with—" Jaden had heard enough. He pulled out his phone again, not to prove anything this time, but to make a call. Karen crossed her arms, laughing. "Oh, what? Calling Mommy? Sweetie, that's not going to—" Jaden held the phone to his ear. The line rang once, twice. Then a deep, commanding voice answered. "Jaden, everything all right?" Jaden kept his eyes locked on Karen, a slow smirk forming on his face. "Hey, Dad. Got a situation here at the pool." Karen's smugness faltered. The pool guests shifted, murmuring among themselves. Some of them had just realized who Jaden was. Karen, however, remained oblivious. She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. What's Daddy gonna do? Show up and beg me to let you swim? This isn't some charity, sweetheart." Jaden's smirk grew. "Actually, I think you'll want to be here when he arrives." A pause. Then on the other end of the line, "I'm on my way. 5 minutes." Jaden hung up, slipped his phone into his pocket, leaned back against the pool railing, and waited. Karen scoffed. "What? He's going to drive here in some old truck. Try to intimidate me?" Jaden chuckled, shaking his head. "Something like that." And then, 5 minutes later, everything changed. The pool gate swung open with a metallic clang. Silence. Every guest at the pool turned their heads toward the entrance as a sleek, black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop just outside the gate. A sharply dressed chauffeur stepped out, walking to the back of the car. With a swift motion, he opened the door, and out stepped Darius Kingston. Tall, powerful, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, polished shoes, and an undeniable aura of authority. He removed his sunglasses, scanning the pool area, his expression unreadable. Karen froze. The security guard straightened immediately, his face shifting from indifference to panic. Even the guests who had once been silent spectators now sat forward, whispering in shock. Karen frowned, squinting at him. She still didn't get it. Who is that?" she muttered. Jaden smirked. "Karen, meet my dad, Darius Kingston, CEO of Kingston Enterprises." Karen's blood ran cold. The name Kingston wasn't just a name, it was power. It was wealth. It was the name of a man who didn't just own a company. He owned the entire neighborhood. And Karen? She had just insulted his son. The air around the pool was thick with silence. No more splashing, no more laughter. Every pair of eyes was fixed on the man who had just stepped out of the black Rolls-Royce, Darius Kingston. The name alone carried weight. A name known in boardrooms, stock markets, and among the elite. But here, in this suburban community, it was the last name Karen wanted to hear. Her mouth went dry as she stared at him. He walked with a confidence that didn't need arrogance. His presence alone commanded respect. And worst of all, people at the pool, her people, were whispering, "That's really him. He owns half the city." Karen just picked a fight with the wrong family. But Karen wasn't one to back down so easily. She quickly straightened her shoulders, masking her growing unease with forced confidence. "So, you're Jaden's father?" she said, her tone sharp, but less certain than before. Darius barely spared her a glance. Instead, he walked toward his son, his expensive shoes clicking against the concrete as he approached Jaden. "You all right?" His voice was calm, steady, but there was something dangerous beneath it. Jaden smirked. "Yeah, Dad. Just got a little misunderstanding with a neighbor." Darius exhaled through his nose, slow and measured. Then, and only then, did he turn to face Karen directly, his gaze pierced through her oversized sunglasses. "Misunderstanding?" he repeated, his voice smooth but chilling. Karen hesitated. For the first time she felt small, but she wasn't about to let this man make her look weak. With a forced laugh she waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Mr. Kingston, this has all been blown way out of proportion. I was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. I didn't recognize your son and, well, you know how things are these days. Can't be too careful." The security guard visibly flinched at her words. The pool guests who had been listening, their faces twisted with disgust, Karen noticed. And for the first time, she realized she had spoken too freely. Darius took a step forward, his presence towering over her. "Tell me something, Karen," he said smoothly. "How many other kids have you stopped at this pool today?" Karen opened her mouth, then shut it. Darius tilted his head slightly. "No answer? That's interesting, because I don't see you questioning the blonde kid over there, or the two teenagers on the diving board. Just my son." Karen flushed. "That's not, I didn't—" Darius cut her off. "You made a mistake today, and you're going to answer for it." Karen's stomach flipped. "Excuse me?" she snapped, trying to regain control of the situation. Darius smirked. "You heard me. I own this neighborhood, Karen. Every house, every street, every community space, including this pool. Karen's smirk vanished. The security guard looked like he wanted to disappear. The guests at the pool were now watching in rapt attention. "That's not possible," Karen whispered. Darius let out a soft chuckle. "Oh, but it is. When I bought this estate last year, I also bought controlling shares of the HOA, which means I make the rules, and I decide who belongs." Karen's face drained of color. Wait. No. You can't just—" Darius nodded toward the security guard. "Effective immediately, Karen is banned from all community spaces, including the pool. If she steps foot here again, have her removed." The security guard stiffened, then nodded quickly. Karen's mouth fell open. "You can't do that." Darius shrugged. "I just did." The pool guests murmured among themselves. Some were shocked, others relieved, but no one came to Karen's defense. For once she was completely alone. Her hands trembled as she clutched her pool bag. "This isn't over, Kingston," she hissed, eyes burning with rage. "You'll regret this." Darius chuckled, adjusting his suit jacket. "I don't regret much, Karen, but you? You might want to start regretting your decisions." Karen spun on her heel and stormed toward the exit, but just as she reached the gate, Darius called after her. "Oh, and Karen?" She stopped, turned slightly. "I'd start looking for a new home. You won't be living here much longer." Karen's eyes widened in horror. Karen stormed through the pool gate, rage boiling in her chest. Her heart pounded, not just from anger, but from humiliation. Darius Kingston had made a fool of her, right in front of the entire community, her neighbors, the people who once respected her. Now? They were whispering behind her back. She could feel it. The way they stared, the way their eyes lingered. She had been the queen of this neighborhood for years, and now, that man, that outsider, was tearing it all away. Karen reached her house and slammed the door shut. She threw her pool bag onto the couch, knocking over a stack of HOA newsletters. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. There was only one person who could fix this. She scrolled through her contacts and hit call. A deep, gruff voice answered on the second ring. "This better be important, Karen." She clenched her teeth. "It's Kingston." A pause, then a low chuckle. "Finally causing trouble, huh?" Karen gripped the phone tighter. "He's trying to run me out of my own neighborhood. I need you to remind him who's really in charge." "Here." There was a long pause. Then, "Consider it handled." Karen smirked. This wasn't over. Not yet. The neighborhood HOA meeting was packed. Word had spread fast about the pool incident, and people were eager to see what would happen next. Atto. The head of the room sat Martin Reynolds, the HOA president, a rigid, old-fashioned man who had been running things long before Kingston moved in. Karen sat next to him, a smug smile plastered on her face. Darius Kingston entered the room last, his presence alone silencing the chatter. He walked in slowly, deliberately, with the kind of confidence that didn't need words. He took a seat at the opposite end of the table, arms folded. Martin cleared his throat. "All right, let's get started. Karen has called this meeting to discuss—" Karen leaned forward. "To discuss the unacceptable behavior of Mr. Kingston." Murmurs spread through the room. Darius raised an eyebrow, amused. Martin adjusted his glasses. "Karen, you requested this meeting under emergency status. What exactly is the issue?" Karen stood. "Kingston is abusing his power. He thinks because he has money, he can do whatever he wants. First, he bans me from the pool. Next, he's threatening to kick me out of my own home. And I'm not the only one. He's buying out properties left and right. He's turning this community into his own personal playground." Some residents nodded, clearly wary of Kingston's influence. Darius leaned back in his chair, watching, waiting. Karen pressed forward. "I demand a vote to restrict his control over the HOA. If we don't stop him now, he'll take over everything." A few guests murmured in agreement. Others looked uneasy. Martin sighed, glancing at Darius. "Mr. Kingston, do you have a response?" Darius smirked. "A response?" "No, just a reminder." Karen frowned. "Excuse me?" Darius pulled a folder from his suit pocket, flipping it open casually. "This is my official ownership contract of the estate." He tapped the document. "As of last year, Kingston Enterprises holds a 51% controlling stake in this neighborhood. That includes— Oh, what's the term?" He glanced at Martin. "Ah, final decision-making authority." Karen's smugness vanished. The room fell silent. Martin adjusted his tie, clearing his throat. "That's legally correct." Karen shot up from her chair. "What?" Darius leaned forward, voice calm but sharp. "You see, Karen, I don't need a vote. I don't need approval." He smiled. "I already own this place." The color drained from Karen's face. Darius turned to Martin. "That being said, I do have a motion I'd like to put forward." Martin hesitated. "And that is?" Darius closed the folder, resting his hands on the table. "Karen Green's removal from the HOA board. Effective immediately." Karen gasped. The room erupted into whispers. "What? You can't do that!" she shrieked. Darius tilted his head. "I can, and I just did." Martin sighed, rubbing his temples. "We'll put it to a vote. All in favor?" Hands rose across the room. Karen's face crumbled. "No. All opposed?" Silence. Martin set down his pen. "Motion passes. Karen, you are no longer on this board." Karen felt the world closing in. She had lost everything. Karen sat in her car outside the community center, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her entire world had just crumbled in the span of a single afternoon. First, Darius Kingston humiliated her at the pool. Then, he got her banned from the very place she had ruled over for years. And now? He had removed her from the HOA board, her last bit of power in this neighborhood. Her breathing was shallow, her vision blurred with fury. This was her neighborhood, her community, and now it was being handed over to some billionaire who thought he could buy respect. Karen refused to let it end like this. With shaking hands, she picked up her phone and dialed a number. The call rang twice before a deep, gruff voice answered. "This better be important, Karen." She swallowed hard. "I need a favor." A long pause. Then, "How big?" Karen's jaw tightened. Big. The Kingston family home was a modern masterpiece, a sleek mansion sitting atop the highest point in the neighborhood. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the moonlight, and the gated driveway was lined with imported palm trees. But tonight, it wasn't just another quiet evening. A black van sat parked a few houses down, its lights off. Inside, 3 men sat in silence, waiting. The leader, a man named Benson, checked his watch. "She said the cameras are disabled for 10 minutes. "That's all we get." The 2 men nodded. With a single motion, the van doors slid open, and the men slipped out into the night. Their mission? Break into Kingston's home. Their goal? Send a message. But what none of them knew was that they were walking straight into a trap. Darius Kingston stood by the massive glass window in his home office, looking down at the dark street below. A small, amused smile tugged at his lips. He had been waiting for this. "They're here." Across the room, 2 security guards straightened, their hands resting on the weapons at their hips. Darius turned to them, calm as ever. "Let them come in. Make them comfortable. Then shut them down." The guards nodded. They knew exactly what to do. Darius took a sip of his whiskey, completely unbothered. This was the final nail in Karen's coffin. Benson and his crew slipped through the side entrance, Karen's instructions fresh in their minds. Disable the security system, smash some valuables, make them feel vulnerable. But the second they stepped inside, something felt off. The house was too quiet. No alarms, no movement. Then, a dozen red laser dots appeared on the men's chests, the unmistakable sign of high-powered rifles locked onto them. From the shadows, 6 armed security guards stepped forward, weapons raised. "Down! Now!" one of them barked. Benson's blood ran cold. "Shh! It's a setup!" The men dropped their weapons, hands up, panicking, and then Darius Kingston stepped into view, calm, smiling, completely in control. "Gentlemen," he greeted smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks. "Welcome to my home." Benson swallowed hard. "Oh, look, man, this was a mistake." Darius held up a hand, silencing him. He slowly walked closer, his polished shoes echoing against the marble floor. Then, with zero emotion, he said, "Who sent you?" Benson hesitated. Darius leaned in, voice lowering. "Tell me now, and I'll make sure you walk out of here. Stay quiet, and you'll wish you hadn't." Benson's breath hitched. He looked at his men, then at the deadly calm in Darius's eyes. And then, with a broken whisper, he spoke. "Karen." The moment the name left his lips, Darius smirked. "That's all I needed to hear." He snapped his fingers. Seconds later, the front doors burst open, and a team of police officers flooded the house. Benson and his crew were hauled to their feet, handcuffed within seconds. Darius watched it all unfold, then turned to one of his security men. "I want every detail handed over to the police. Let's see how Karen talks her way out of this one." The guard nodded. "Understood, sir." Darius took one last sip of his whiskey, watching as the intruders were dragged away. Then he reached for his phone. It was time to make one last call. Karen was asleep when the pounding on her front door shook her awake. Bang! 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 "Karen." "Green, open up! This is the police!" Her heart stopped. She stumbled out of bed, her hands trembling as she rushed to the door. The second she opened it, she was blinded by the flashing red and blue lights of the squad cars outside. And standing, right there on her doorstep, was Darius Kingston. Calm, powerful, and completely unbothered. Behind him, 2 police officers stepped forward. "Karen Green, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit burglary and harassment. You have the right to remain silent. Anything." "You say—" Karen screamed. "No, no, this isn't happening. He set me up. He—" Darius simply chuckled. "Actions have consequences, Karen. You should have learned that by now." The officers grabbed her arms, securing the handcuffs with a loud metallic snap. Karen thrashed, panicked, desperate, but it was too late as the officers dragged her away. She locked eyes with Darius one last time, and for the first time ever, she saw the truth. She had lost. Completely, and there was nothing she could do about it. Jaden stretched his arms behind his head, floating lazily in the pool. The sun was warm, the water perfect. No Karen. No tension. Just peace. Darius stood by, the pool's edge, watching his son with a proud smile. "So, how's it feel?" he asked. Jaden grinned. "Like justice." Darius chuckled, shaking his head. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. Don't forget to tap the bell icon to stay updated. Your support means the world.